Hello, credit union executives. Welcome to See You on the Show, where we give you up-to-date information on how you can reduce risk, keep key talent, and take a strategic approach to your personal financial wellness. Hosted by me, Doug English, a certified financial planner and former credit union insider with ACT Advisors.
My guest on today's podcast is Sharon Messmore from CUES. CUES is a credit union membership organization whose vision is to empower the credit union leaders of today and tomorrow to realize their potential and transform their organizations. Along with Sharon, I also talked to Sophia Rizzi and Dave Piper from Industry Insights. We're talking about the CUES Executive Compensation Survey. Now, they provide some insights into what differentiates the CUES survey, and I think particularly interesting, a new executive compensation calculator that they've brought out.
Welcome, everyone. I'm delighted to have you join me on the show. And what we're here to talk about is the CUES Executive Compensation Survey. So can you guys tell me a little bit about the survey, about its history and process, and how credit unions participate in the survey?
So we've been partnering, Industry Insights has been partnering with CUES since 2013 to conduct the Executive Compensation Survey. We do it annually, launching it in January of every year. With that survey, we also have the Employee Salary Survey, which is for admin positions, accounting, marketing, member services, other positions that aren't C-suite. So that is also with the Executive Compensation Survey. The Executive Survey covers 23 positions: CEO, marketing executive, HR executive, CFO, those types of positions. New this year, we had enough data to report on the Diversity and Inclusion Officer, which was added to the survey in 2021, but we didn't have sufficient data that first year. But now that it's becoming more popular at a lot of companies, we are getting more data every year on that. And then this year, we had 242 credit unions participate.
So 242 credit unions participated. And is that enough to get valid T-stats, like if that's the right language?
Yeah, for sure. We usually look for about 30 records to create a data set that is like complete and usable. And so that definitely exceeds that rule. And then 242, that was the amount of CEOs we have, since that's the most popular position. So a lot of people use the study specifically for the CEO data.
Ah, that's interesting. So does the CUES study differentiate itself in methodology or breadth, or is there, obviously there's several industry studies. How does the CUES study differentiate itself, or does it?
I think one of the big things that differentiates us is the way we allow our reporting to be used. Survey data itself is going to be pretty similar group to group, especially if you're getting information from the same credit unions. But what often is done then is it's put in one report, and that report is provided as a static PDF or something like that for the credit union to look at and make their decisions based off of 3 or 4 reports that they pull together. What CUES allows is we house everything online, and we allow you to pull as many reports as you want to be very customized and filterable. So if you want to look at the CEO position, you don't have to look at just a nationwide CEO position. You can look at the CEO position for the Western region in the asset ranges between 1 and 3 billion. And then you can really drill down into something that's a bit more useful when you're really thinking about that. And there are some new tools we've also added to that online reporting portal that Dave or Sophia could talk to that will be available 2023.
Do you want to tease those, Sharon? You want to tell us?
Yeah, so certainly I can comment. There are a couple items that we're adding in 2023. We're planning to add an executive compensation calculator, which will provide, and the great thing we really like about the calculator is you never will see insufficient data. So we take all the metrics that we get, and then we will quantify that into terms, things like, we haven't actually decided yet what we're going to use in 2023. We kind of have to see the data, see how it, rolls out. But based on your education level, your years of service, where you are regionally, the asset size of the credit union. And then we take all those metrics and then we would roll that into a calculator that they can use, and they can make their selections, and they will get a number back and they will get a range back. And it's really useful when you really want to kind of target, hey, whereabouts should I be for a CFO sitting in St. Louis, Missouri, whatever, that's at a credit union that's at 1.5 billion, and you can kind of put all those metrics in there, and then you get a number back that says, this is my typical range for that CFO, and then here would be kind of the benchmark number. And so we really like that, because when you drill down into the data, sometimes, depending how much data we have, we get insufficient funds back or insufficient data to give you a number. And so that gets kind of frustrating to a user. Then they're like, okay, well, I'll take away this metric or I'll take away that metric, so then I can actually get something I can use. And so while the online tools are awesome and we think they're great, and for number crunchers, you can really dive into the data. Occasionally you get that insufficient data metric back, and then that can be kind of frustrating. But the calculator will always give you a number. We use a regression-based analysis to ensure you always get a number back when you put in a certain set of threshold.
Can we talk a bit about use, about how to use the data? And a lot of credit unions hire third party to try to have a impartial, broad approach to getting good salary data to work with their HR salary committee. And as the experts, how would you suggest that credit unions go about figuring out what fair comp is strictly from a data standpoint? What's the best way to do it?
What we do provide is the data, right? And so as you look at that, I would think most credit unions want to at least be at the median. They want to be at that benchmark, and preferably to hire the best talent, to retain the best talent, they're going to want to be a little bit above that. And so when you look at that data, we find the medians very useful. And how do the medians change year over year? We don't know that Joe Smith was at a certain position, but we can look at their data and say, okay, their president or CEO was there and had 25 years of service, and now that's changed to 26 years of service. And we can make the assumption this is the same sample. Okay, when we look at the demographics that come with it. So we don't know who the individual is, but we can kind of get those same samples. And that is a really good benchmark when we compare year over year stats to really know, well, because we are getting a different, bigger sample every year, right? So while we got 242 this year, maybe we got 246 the year before, but 70 of them were different credit unions. Right. And so now our samples kind of changed and tweaked a little bit. So when you compare year over year stats there, not quite as clean when we know we have that same sample, and we can really look at those benchmarks, how they moved, how they changed. So now as you're looking at those medians, you can feel pretty good. Hey, we were above the median last year. When we look at that same sample, they all went up 4.5%. We're doing a 5.5. We're staying above that median. We feel good about those kind of things. So I think when we suggest looking at the data, we really we provide averages. You have averages, but we really like those medians, because as long as your sample is big enough, it's going to provide a more accurate representation of kind of where you're at. Because averages can kind of skew your data. You get a couple people that really like to pay a lot or like to pay a little, or whatever it might be, can tend to skew your data a little more, especially as the sample gets smaller.
So is it useful to the industry consultants? Now, I have not worked with them, so I'm not sure how exactly they go about pulling additional data, but the assumption would be they take a Q's survey and some of the other surveys, and they pull them all together and create a aggregate of aggregates. And I wonder, there's got to be some duplication, right? Because your data set is probably, they're inclusive of each other. Is there any additional value to that you foresee?
I think there's always value in getting additional data points. I would think that assuming those different sample sets are collected in a similar manner and provide similar data, that they would see a lot of similarity. As long as if your samples are relatively large, I would feel pretty comfortable saying they should see some similarities. I think, as Sharon pointed out, one of the beauties of the online tool is really being able to drill down a little bit more, because I have a daughter that works in the Northwest up in Seattle, and I know they pay a lot better up there than they do here in the Midwest, just based on my own experience, and the job she's in is a field I'm very familiar with. And I would expect the same as we look at the credit union industry, that it is very regionalized in terms of especially compensation.
Do you have a hard time with any particular point in asset size to get enough participants to have good data? Do you get all the way from the 100 million to the multi-billion? You have good data across the spectrum?
We have pretty decent data. I would say definitely the smaller credit unions are ones we would love to get more from. Ideally, Q's will get participation from every credit union in the country, right? That would be the goal. I'm sure that that's what Industry Insight also wants to do, is crunch the numbers of every single credit union. But yeah, the ones that are smaller, less than 500 million, really are the places where it's harder to find the data. Once you get above that, much easier. And especially in that 1 to 5 billion range, you got all the data you could ever need.
All the data you could want. Interesting. So within the data, I've seen surveys, and what I'm used to seeing is some the ranges exactly like David had mentioned, and it being highly correlated with asset size, and then obviously regionally correlated. But then the additional benefits area is one that I've always wished for, to be able to help the credit union executives dial that part in a bit. And what I mean by that is the executive benefits that you're typically seeing in the credit union space. 457B makes a little bit of a difference, right? It's a supplemental plan that helps. 457F can be a very substantial difference. Collateral assignment can be a full doubling of the present value of comp. How is it going with the data around some of those additional executive benefits? I'm used to seeing kind of like a percentage of folks that have the benefit, but it never really goes further than that. And it's probably because it's hard to get the data. Any comments on that?
I can speak a little bit on just the trends we've seen over the last 5 years. As far as the 457B and the 401k, both have steadily been increasing in terms of credit unions that are offering it. Not huge, but every year we have seen increases. And then, that was 97% of CEOs were eligible for a 401k in this year's study, or last year's study. And then 49% were eligible for the 457B plan.
And then a smaller percentage for the 457F.
Yeah, the collateral assignment in 457F seem to me like they usually come in around 35%.
You're right on it, 34 for CEO. Yeah.
See, I told you I read your survey. I wasn't kidding. I read it. And is there data that indicates because what I do is financial planning for credit union executives, right? So I see these plans in reality, and you don't often see someone have a 457F and a collateral assignment. You see one or the other. Often the collateral assignment replaced the old 457F that used to be there. Does your data go to the level where it can tell if someone is likely to have both or just one?
Yeah, it is a check all that apply question on the survey, but I don't have a stat on those that selected both of those.
In our reporting, though, I'm not sure we would provide that differentiator, right, that you're kind of referring to, which would be where they would, like, what percentage have both, I think is kind of exactly what you're asking. But
I think it's interesting, but not a game changer. But this next one is, so as you may know, in most employees' cases, they can save enough money by contributing to a 401k. You contribute to a 401k, you do 10% of salary, you do it for lots and lots of years, and you build up a substantial value. But when you get into the executive suite and get into pay levels that are higher, you get capped out. You get the same contribution limits as everybody else. Your contribution limits don't go any higher. So that's why you have executive compensation strategies to try to help those folks replace a reasonable percentage of pay. And for most Americans, retirement, you're looking to have 60 to 80% replacement of what you made before when you retire to have a comfortable lifestyle. So the executive suite can't do that without these additional plans. But my question is when I'm used to seeing executive benefit specialists work with the board, they target a level. They're targeting a replacement level for these executives, usually in that 60% range, 60% of final pay. And I've never seen a survey attempt to do anything with that. And maybe it's not possible. But I think it would be really interesting and useful data if we could give the industry some information about how much replacement compensation a particular credit union is targeting. Any discussion or thoughts around those ideas?
I think the statement's a very valid one. I do think the data collection would be a challenge in how we frame that. It's making me think, for sure, like is there something we could do in that space? I like the idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we could explore that concept. I think there's a way you could back into it. You would have to, because the 457B and 401k is a balance, right? It's easy. Do you have a 401k? Yes. And do you gather balances in the survey?
We don't.
Not ranges.
Yeah, we
not
don't
anything,
today.
right?
I think the challenge is a lot of the times it would appear, I'm not making a definitive statement here, but it would appear that oftentimes the HR manager or HR, VP, whatever, is filling this out. And so they would not have access to that level of detail for sure. What's my CEO's 401k balance or whatever it might be. So I think that would be the challenge in the data collection.
No, I think it maybe is problematic. Maybe it's not possible, but I know it would be very useful if we could, as an industry, figure out a way to get that transparency for folks. Because again, in my work, I've calculated that the present value of the executive benefits is greater than the salary and bonus. Sometimes it depends on the structure, of course, but sometimes it's more than the part that you can get good data on. So it's a big one for us to try to figure out how to capture at some point in the future. Sophia, were you going to say something on that?
No, I think that the data that we collect definitely shows what you were saying. The employer contribution has been 5% for the last 5 years. It hasn't increased or decreased, so it's been very steady. And we have seen some of those other perquisites increase. Like I think the two I had were personal financial planning and paid education benefits. Both have increased over the last 5 years. We ran some reports before this and just that type of benefit trend data. So we have seen that.
I am so thrilled to hear you say personal financial planning. What a great subject. What percentage of folks? I think that's around 30% as well, right?
13. We're showing 13%. Like that's an
area of opportunity for sure.
And I think the challenges in a lot of these are the ask, if you will, on the survey is, do you have this is this something you're eligible for? And we really don't take that next step as to, well, at what level is the contribution of the credit union on your behalf or whatever it might be. Like a club membership, right? Is, do you have this or not? But correct me if I'm wrong, Sophia. Sophia knows the data way better than I do. So, but I don't think we say, well, what are you contributing to their club membership, like actual dollars?
It's all about eligibility.
Yeah. Well, plus you got to get them to fill out the survey. So if you go too deep and ask too many questions, we're all going to say, oh, I don't think so. Yeah.
Yes. From the side of the participation, I'm sitting here hearing all these questions like, oh, this is really good information. What can we take out that people don't use so we can add in these new things so that we're not adding more things for people to then have to add because participation is a struggle sometimes because it does take time to fill out all of this information and less time than maybe it used to. We've made improvements over the past couple of years, but it certainly takes time and effort.
Would it be fair to say that there is no means of credit unions are asked by multiple providers to do a survey? There is no means of the cut and paste in this area. There isn't an agreed upon format where a credit union could be quicker about getting that across, correct?
That'd be nice.
That is correct. There is not an agreed upon format. That's correct.
I hear opportunity, but okay. All right. Now unless you had other comments on that question, another thing I want to think about is pretend that you are a young executive, as you very well may be, and you're attempting to kind of set some career goals. Maybe you're running a $300 million credit union right now, and you want to sort of target your move upward. The obvious data point is the just pure asset size and comp being super highly correlated. Are there any other, is like the second highest correlated area regionality, or are there other factors?
I can talk about that a little bit. Dave kind of hinted at it when we were talking about our compensation calculator that's going to be regression based. We actually have a section in the report, it's the statistical modeling section, that is kind of what's behind how the compensation calculator works. We focus on asset size, which is the most heavily correlated, but education level and your years of experience are the second two most correlated with compensation. And so I would say, especially for a person early in their career, maybe using those perks that you get through your position to go back to school and get a higher degree, an MBA or something like that, would be a heavy influence on your compensation.
Asset size, years of experience, that one's going to take a while, and education. So two of these things you can control with growing your credit union, with working at larger credit unions, with mergers, and then education. So those are highly in your control. One of the things that I hear often from CEOs is that, these are servant leaders, right? They're not in the credit union movement to enrich themselves. Yet, as an industry, if we don't make sure that they're paid at the median level for their area of the country, for their size credit union, they're going to be headhunted aggressively by other industries. So we need to make sure that they are. But the hard part is these servant leaders don't like to go to their HR salary committee and talk about this stuff and talk about my salary that is double or triple what any of the board members ever made in their entire career. And it's a hard thing for many executives. So have you foreseen a way with this new calculator that might be any sort of simplification of that issue, or ways to get the board members directly involved with the survey and using it so that the CEO doesn't have to come to the board and ask for them to make sure the comp is appropriate?
I think that's where the infographic that I won't let Dave talk about.
Oh, the secret infographic.
I think that'll have some really helpful things for CEOs to be able to bring to their board to let the board know at a quick glance, here's some information that might be useful while you set my pay.
Yeah, it would be interesting if the board could directly have the data from the third party, from Q's and not have the executive to have to bring it to them.
Yeah,
I know
Q's itself, we do often give access to board members. Many board members run reports in our surveys and are pulling that information so that they can be aware of what they should be setting compensation for.
So a Q's member credit union already has that option.
Yes.
For a board member to go and pull this data. And that would probably be very appropriate use of the data. But the big change this year is that instead of looking at tables of data, which make folks like Sophia and me very happy, they might just go into the calculator and put the data in and come out with a range of numbers, and then they can bring back to the committee for a conversation, right? Mm-hmm. Nice work, guys. That's really smart. Is that the first in the industry? Is this the first time someone has a calculator to simplify the process for them? I hope.
I'm not sure, Sharon.
I don't know.
I mean, we've done calculators in other industries, certainly, but
Yeah, I'm certainly used to seeing it in other things, but not in credit union executive comp. I think it's pretty neat.
I'm super excited, obviously.
We actually, from Industry Insights side, are actually very excited because we do believe the simplicity, and it's exactly what you described. It's instead of going and digging through the numbers and trying to find, hey, this is the number I need, literally within 30 seconds, you go straight to the calculator, you make your selections, and you get a number. And it's so simple, and we'll give them some kind of basis on which to draw upon that a board member, or as you say, a CEO that doesn't feel comfortable, and hey, board member, can you just go log in and just run the calculator for me?
So is there a situation that you can imagine when it would be an error to do that, when they really need to have a broader pull on the data?
So one of the things that we run into when we do these calculators for other industries is, somebody may come in later on in their career, they've had 10 years of experience already, but they took some time off, maybe to have a family or whatever, but they have a higher degree. So that could throw things off because they could be just re-entering the workforce later on or taking this part-time position. So there are those discrepancies, I guess, that could occur.
So if you had that kind of a situation, what should you do?
Yeah, I think it's just you still need to use every piece of data with a little bit of caution, right? And so if you kind of have some special circumstances, then you need to kind of factor that in.
And what we kind of have the how not to use the data points that are in the study and such. The number one thing is these are not absolute standards. These are recommendations. The goal of the study is to provide information to credit union executives to better make decisions. It's not saying this is the standard. This is what needs to be paid. So that's the one thing we try to remind everybody when they're utilizing any type of data, whether it's the static PDF report or this new tool that will be coming out this year.
Yeah, so you got to take the data and then make it yours. Customize it to your strategic objectives and the standards within your credit union. But the idea of the calculator could eliminate or maybe reduce some of the need for the third party to be interpreting the data from numerous sites and then bringing that to the board, who then has the discussion with the executive. Maybe. Nothing against folks in that field. Just transparency and simplicity are a value to all of us. But did you have any further thoughts for our listeners on the CUES Executive Comp Survey? That is, again, the request to get that completed is coming out in January of 23. And we need to get your participation to try to beat the 242 credit union number from last year. Do we have a goal, Sharon? Are we going for a certain number of credit unions? I know you said all of them. What is that, 5,000?
Yeah, I mean, we could set the reasonable goal of, let's say, 300. That's another 60 from last year. Or we could set a bit more audacious goal and say if we could get 450. That would be pretty great.
Yes, it would. That would be a huge change.
Yeah. That would certainly help everyone who's accessing the reports throughout the rest of the year. And we keep reports year after year. So when you go in, you can still see 2022 reporting and use that to compare against 2023. Continue to do all of that. It's a really great tool. And the more people participate, the better the tool becomes.
Very good. Well, Dave or Sophia, any further thoughts for our listeners on anything to do with a survey, best uses, the things not to do, and just how to make the most of the data?
Yeah, nothing more to add from me. I would reiterate the participation. And the more data we get, the better. I really like the ideas of regionalized data. And so that's where participation really can come into play and really, really help. And because that's where I think the rubber really hits the road sometimes with the regionalized. When we get beyond asset size and some of the things Sophia mentioned, that regionalization really can come into play with some of the compensation numbers.
So the calculator is not going to have regionalization in it yet.
Well, we'll have to see. We need to be able to, as we put that data into our model, know we have a good correlation with the data in terms of what it will do, and we can give you back a good significant number. That is the hope. That's certainly the hope. Yes.
Yes, we want the calculator to be reliable. So if that means not having regional data because we don't have it, then it won't have it. But hopefully there will be enough people who participate that we can do it.
Yeah, so maybe 300 would do it. We have regional data if we get 300, maybe. We'll see. Well,
I think our smallest sample was from the Northeast part of the United States. I think that was our smallest.
My homeland, you Northeasterners we're all rushing about. That's what we did up there, and
no time,
not completing the surveys, and thus we don't have good data to make sure we're being paid fairly. So, Northeastern credit unions, please fill out your Q's survey data so that we can get regional data for the whole credit union and credit union industry and have everyone be fairly compensated. So thanks very much for joining me today. I appreciate your insights and look forward to seeing the survey when it's released.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all the insider credit union knowledge we have for this episode. Are you enjoying the conversation? Be sure to subscribe and share your thoughts with other credit union leaders by leaving us a review. See you next time on See You on the Show.
The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual security. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult your financial advisor prior to investing. Economic forecasts set forth may not develop as predicted. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. Indexes are unmanaged and cannot be invested into directly.